it's taken me a long time to realize the importance of this first step. Since we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives have become unmanageable. Okay? What does powerlessness mean to you personally? Anybody? Good thing, bad thing?
Can't handle it.
Say again?
No control, out of control, can't handle it, don't know what to do with it.
Okay.
Weakness.
Weakness? Let's talk about that. What do you mean by that?
Weak to my face.
Okay.
Repeat. Can you read it again?
It says, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives have become unmanageable.
We have more than motivation, like money, violence.
Okay.
Their life. I was weak to that life.
Well, many of us have more than one, but here's a question. What is the first one that brought you into seeking help? Drugs, alcohol?
I couldn't keep a job, I didn't have no money, couldn't keep no dough.
Okay, so that's unmanageability. Okay.
Whenever I go into the store, I'm sober, right? I'm sober. I have money and I can't put the brakes on, stop buying stuff. I'll just grab stuff and get this. Part of that.
Okay, now, all those things that y'all mentioned, is that a moral weakness or is that something else?
Combination.
More.
It's a combination.
Okay, tell me about it.
You say, what did he say?
He said a combination.
Y'all wait for me to explain that combination.
Yeah, you started it.
The combination is when we get addicted is we don't realize that we have become addicted, number one. And that's why we find out that we've lost control. We thought we had control. We still, and a lot of times we still believe we got control, but we never had control from the very beginning. And so once we finally realize and accept the fact that we do not have control, then that's the right place that we need to be at in order to find something that can have control in our lives. And what we talk about is Jesus Christ helping us to gain control, but he's the one in charge, not us. And it's giving control over to him, which is the hardest thing for us to do, is to give it over because we don't know how to control it. You know, and so in everything that we do, it's a domino effect. When we start, the mind says, I can handle this. And then when we start doing it, we find out we can't. You know, because when I say I'm not gonna drink today, what am I focusing on? I'm focusing on that drink. If I'm not gonna watch pornography today, what am I focusing on? I'm focusing on not watching pornography. So what my mind is focusing on, and then when my mind says I'm not, then what flashes through my head?
The same
Everything that I said I'm not gonna do, and then I end up doing it. Matter of fact, Reggie said it earlier. That's what you said it. That's what I do that then I don't want to do, and that's what I want to do, I can't do. So that's where we stay at, is in that balance until we finally surrender.
That's true. Let's talk a little bit about the disease of addiction.
Hey, just kind of say something about what he just said.
Okay.
Because he said we gotta give it to God because God or Jesus Christ, so when we study here, can control it. But that's where a lot of us, well, not a lot of us, I'm gonna talk about me, have had a lot of lapses because like he said, we don't even know we out of control, and I might go into the treatment center, and all I need to do is stop for right now, and then I can do it again and think I can have some control. For some reason, when I know that the last time it wasn't working too good for me, But then for some reason in my crazy messed up mind, I think that I can do it again, but just don't do it like that or do that much or go around these. And I think in my mind that I have some kind of control when I don't.
And that's
So
what
it
you,
might be saying Jesus, because the only time that I have had a little bit of time is when, and then, because my mind, I want to control stuff, but then I say, God help me, and then God helps me, and I come out of it, and then I'm out of it, and so I'm doing good, and so right now I don't need you God no more right now at this point, because it's all right. But it's every time I do that, I find myself in a real bad situation.
how many people have relapsed after a very long time of being clean? Everybody probably in this room, right? Why, somebody who is on the other side of that, tell me why that's a dangerous place to be when you've been clean for a long time. Go ahead, sir.
All sense of security.
Mhm.
You think that you have enough under your belt, but really, it's so just a false thing to think that you can just do this on your own in the way that you were doing before, even though you may make plans, this and that, even if it's like 6-7 years or something like that. But what happens is that false sense of security happens and you get overly confident, and then next thing you know, you do this, that, and just it creeps. And it just gets in the mind.
I'm coming to you, Dwayne. Or you do like one guy that was brought up from the AA book, was clean for 30 years and decided on his anniversary to celebrate. Instead of buying one beer, he bought 30 cases.
Shoot.
Okay, because he knew one was never going to be enough. Okay. So it doesn't matter how long we've been clean. If we're not in recovery and we're not doing the program, we're just one step away from starting over again,
Yes.
of doing whatever we were doing before. Go ahead, Mike.
Point of that. I can cover it. And a lot of people let me share this. That, I started drinking alcohol when I was 7, smoking cigarettes when I was 9, marijuana when I was 11, and I had needle in my arm when I turned 18. Okay. Guess what? I went to the penitentiary 4 times. When you go to the penitentiary and they shake your head and they bathe you and do all that, you go work out and you do everything you're supposed to do, go to church, go to AA, NACA, you think you got that shit.
No, you're okay. Go ahead.
You think you got that thing's pure. But boy, back in the 80s, when they let you out of that bus, when you got on that bus in Huntsville, you had $200 in your pocket, plus whatever money you had on the commissary. Guess what would be on that bus? A prostitute and a dope dealer. And then every one of these guys in the penitentiary had $200 in their pocket. Well, you don't think that temptation is going to them immediately?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I got out, the first time I got out of the penitentiary, I did 7 months down there. I got out 5 months later, I was down there again on a new case. Okay, I made it 5 years between that one and the next one. And then 6 years between that one and the next one. I got 30 years in 1995 for stealing 3 rolls of copper to go buy another hit of crack. Okay? We would commit felonies, for $100 worth of material to go to the penitentiary for 30 years. They gave me 30 years in 1995. I'm still on parole. I'm still on probation, and I love coming here on Monday night. But I'm telling you, once we get here and we know these people, we know this program, that desire goes away. Petition students, I'm sorry about that.
Ma'am, you were going to say something?
Yes, I was great for 15 years. And I thought, you know what, Daddy, I was talking to the Lord, and I said, I hate beer. I can have a beer, right? And in my mind, he said, well, yes, daughter. And I drank that one, and then I went and saw people running around with 40-ounce beers. And I thought, I'll do one of those. Before I knew it, I was at 4 40s a day within 3 weeks. And that's after 15 years. And before you relapse, you're already relapsed. When you start thinking, you're already relapsed.
Yeah, it's called, there's a word for it, and I have it here in my notes. It's where you kind of have a backdoor, reservation.
Yeah.
I will stay clean unless I have a death in my family or something really tragic. And I just need this, whatever this is, to get through. Okay? It's kind of like the old story of the guys that went down into the Caribbean to invade a island, and the captain burned the ships before they, as they got to the shore. And what do you think that said to those sailors as they were going to fight the natives? He burned the ships. What's that mean?
You ain't going nowhere.
You ain't going back, so you're gonna fight for your life.
Yeah.
And basically, that's what we're doing. We're fighting for our lives. Okay? Addiction, I'm gonna come to you. Addiction is a disease, and it took me a long time to accept that. Okay? And until we accept that, is a diabetic ever cured?
No.
No.
They can manage it with medicine and different things. Same thing with addiction. Now, religion and churches will tell you that that's a bad thing to say, that it's a disease, but it is a disease. In the back of my mind, sexual images take a whole different connotation for most people. So for me, just like you were saying, sister, for me, I cannot even watch an R-rated movie because that will take me somewhere else in my mind. And before I know it, I'll be right back where I was. Going to I'm dating myself. I don't have to go to the video store anymore because it's right there on streaming, right? So we have to know that that disease never goes away. And the devil is very subtle. It will come to us in very subtle ways. You know, well, you can watch TikTok. Everybody knows that TikTok has just as much pornography in a different way. It may not be X, but it shows some hard. Okay. And all he's trying to do is get your mind thinking in a certain way. Yes, sir.
I believe, well, I mean, I do understand that I think for me, it's a spiritual malady that this disconnect, that because of this disease I have, that I get a daily reprieve provided, because I mean, I found the program for 3.5 and becoming a deacon in church and a new wife, wonderful woman and business and everything just wonderful. And these blessings that came my way told me I didn't need this anymore. I didn't need the 12 steps. I got service at my church and we were busy mentoring kids, for baptism, and this is where I need to be. And I still stayed sober another 3.5 years in wonderful peace. But when life got life, being the loss of my wife, everything I worked so hard for was gone in 6 months.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't getting, now I understand this is something that if I really truly want to stay sober forever, till I'm at the next realm of existence, this is a blessing to have this kind of program, but it's got to be a daily walk.
Absolutely.
Because life is going to get where it goes, and without it, I'll just be back.
And I'm going to come to you. And the thing that we have to understand is that we need each other. And concept number 1, or tradition 1, it talks about the unity of the group. We're not coming here just for ourselves. Just like some of you are sharing some personal things, that's helping somebody else in this room tonight to hear something that they hadn't heard before, maybe, and to take a little gem with them home. Like, okay, if that guy or that lady was doing this for 15 years, I shouldn't be too hard on myself if I was only clean for a month or 6 months or whatever it is. Okay? That's the devil's playbook. He wants you to get down on yourself. That's never from God. God says, come as you are. Come to me, all ye are labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Okay? I agree with you. It's spiritual. The connection that's why we offer the invitation, because a lot of people do this different ways. Some people just use Jesus. Some people do, the different programs only. Some people do a combination of all of the above. Okay? But find what works for you and do it, but do it consistently. And somebody was gonna say something over here.
Um, Our addiction is out there doing push-ups every day and hoping for us to slip, for something bad to happen or anything, so we'll go right back to him. He is working out, waiting every day.
He is a master of studying us. And here's the other thing, he knows us better than we know ourselves.
Yep.
You know, and so we have to be on guard. One of the things I'll share with you that I do is that I looked up I looked up several scriptures that deal with the flesh, that deal with temptation. I have them on flashcards and I say them and pray over them every morning. And I read them again at night. Because if I don't have that armor, when certain things present themselves, and they're going to present themselves.
Right.
Don't fool yourself. If your thing is on, you're gonna see something on the TV that's gonna trigger that thought.
When you saying, because I keep hearing you saying TV or TikTok, I'm kind of weird. I've never had TikTok. I don't watch TV because I think, all this stuff is on there, it's trying to program me. But for me, I found, okay, I don't watch TV, I don't look at TikTok. But some of the music that I've listened to will take me and I be ready to buck and everything else. So for me today, like I love, what's his name, that crazy boy out of Lil Boosie. But I can't listen to Lil Boosie. It takes my mind to, like, when I was out there in the streets, when I'm drinking, I'm drugging, I'm bucking all over the place. So I don't listen, I mean, no, we have to be careful, not just what we look at, but what we listen to, because that stuff will get us, we'll be, I'll go flying in my car and it end up somewhere I don't want to be.
You're laughing, what you're saying is true. It's very true. Go ahead, sir.
I'm gonna say something that I don't really see a lot of churches preaching about. Well, I went to the meds and I got out and do that. My addiction was money, so I'm thinking it's not really a drug. So, but I've known this since I was a kid. The more money you got, you get what you want.
Let's share up front, please.
You can do what you want, you do whatever you want. But in the end, every time I get locked up, I'd always have to spend a lot of my money, get my lawyers together and working on my case for years. And still getting the time, when I get out, I'll still have money, but it's an addiction that I don't ever hear the churches talk about. Money is
Yeah.
the root of all evil.
Yes, the love of money. We don't talk about it a lot because I think, you know, I think churches are scared of driving off the people who bring in the money. So
Right.
they're not going to talk a lot about certain things.
Like when I got out this time, my mom had a lot of medical bills and stuff like that, so I'm thinking, I get out, I'm working 2 jobs, 6 months straight. I got all my money together and I went buy me half a brick and I started slinging again to help her pay her money off. But I'm doing something good because I feel like I'm doing something good. But in the long run, I still got to end up getting locked up.
Right.
So.
You had something to say?
I'll be very brief about it. How many of y'all raise your hand if your family members with alcohol tried? There we go. Guess what? Repetition strengthens your fun. Guess what? When we step into AA, NA, CA, whatever A it is, and look, you baptized? Look, I got baptized when I was 1 year old. So I went to a church to get some food stamps and get my bill paid. And I like that in my address that doesn't. We baptized you when you were 1 year old? No, I didn't think that. But that gave me a little inspiration. When you go in there and get baptized, when you come here on Monday night and you can look somebody right next to you, you've been through everything that you've been through, man, that allows you, because guess what? I'm gonna be real blunt about this. Alcohol and drugs has a very sexual misunderstanding, understanding, or no definition whatsoever. But you think it's the best and it's really the worst. Look at all the things that we catch, that people catch out there in this world today, because they've got Bimbo or Dimbo was the best person in the world. When you look each other in the eye, and you don't have to lie no more, I'm gonna shut up, I'm kind of blunt about what I say. The guy just lets me, I'll never be a pastor, but I can look an inmate or a patient in the eye and never lie. Now, I promise you, man, you're blessed for being here. I'm gonna shut up and I can raise my hand again.
No, you're fine. So I want to talk a little bit about powerlessness. Because that seems like it has a negative ring to it, but listen to the definition. Maybe it might help us. We are powerless when the driving force in our life is beyond our control. Whatever that driving force, for this gentleman, it was money. Okay, something we don't often think about in these rooms. But if that's our driving force, we are powerless over it. The only person that can free us from that is Jesus.
Come on.
That's the only person that can free us from that. Because no amount of good talking I do to you is going to help you break that power, that I want to even say demonic greed, because it takes different forms. Somebody brought up music. Show you how subtle this thing is called music. I was working in my backyard, planting some sod over the weekend, and I have a playlist of R&B, you know, old school 70s, 80s. And a song came on there that I listened to a lot in the past and never caught on to. I probably ought not to be listening to this. Some of you will recognize it. Me and Mrs. Jones. Yeah. Going on. And I'm singing along, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is about adultery. I gotta go back to my playlist and take that out of there. But I brought that up not to say how good I am, but to show you how subtle Satan is. He will use just a good, what appears to be a good song. But when you're in tune with the Spirit is going to say, hey, you know, it says the Spirit lusted against the flesh and the flesh against the Spirit. They're fighting against each other for what's best for us. Well, one is fighting for what's best for us. Let me rephrase that. And that is the Spirit. So when we have the word going in every day, it's going to help us to identify the areas where we're going to get in our powerlessness and our unmanageability. I'm going to touch on unmanageability a little bit. Let me back up here. What is denial when it comes to our disease of addiction? What does that word mean? Denial. Yes.
My problem's not as bad as I think.
It's not as bad as I think.
That's not acceptable.
Say again. Non-acceptance. I like that. In the back.
Not admitting you have a problem.
That's it. Not admitting you have a problem. I went through probably about 15 years before I finally admitted, you know what? I got a problem with pornography, because I used to go to the video store and rent 5, 6 movies on a Friday night at a time. And here's the crazy part about that. And after I got watching them say, I'll never do this again, and then the next Friday night, go back and do the same thing. What I didn't realize, it's a drug, okay? Endorphins, not endorphins, but
Serotonin.
well, that's part of it, but dopamine is released in the brain on any type of addiction, on any type of compulsive behavior. Okay, whether it's sugar, whether it's food, whether it's sex, all of it is dopamine driven. And something that I didn't understand, and Ricky helped me understand this early in my coming to recovery here 12 years ago, was that it's all the same. Because they weren't talking about porn back then. And I was like, you're not talking about what's bothering me. He says, yeah, we are. I said, all you're talking about is drugs and alcohol. Okay? But it's a drug for the brain. Okay? Somebody mentioned serotonin. There's about 5 cocktails of hormones, brain chemicals, I should say, that are released in any kind of sexual release. Okay, one of them is a bonding chemical that bonds us to that particular image. This is why images stay in our brain, whether they're good or bad. If I was to say, remember what happened when you were 5 years old or 10 years old, and I give you just a little snippet of what it was, you can immediately bring that picture back up. It's cemented in our brain. You know, the Bible has something to say about that. Won't get into that right now. Except to say that it's a spiritual, like this man said back here, there's a spiritual connection. Okay, so we have to be careful, just like the lady said back there, what we're allowing into our brains, because once it's in there, it's in there. You know, now we can get some control over it from God to help us not to dwell on them. You know, to focus on something else, because unlike other things, the brain is resilient. If we start focusing on good stuff, the good stuff will sort of overlap and replant those areas of our brain so that we can continue to do good stuff. So denial is when we compare ourselves with other addicts whose addiction seems worse than our own, or we may blame one particular drug. One of the easiest ways to tell that we're in denial is when we find ourselves giving plausible but untrue reasons for our behavior. Well, you make me do this because you won't stop nagging me, so I gotta use drugs. You know, I heard somebody say, I gotta stay drunk to deal with you people in this house. That's, you know, so there's a couple of questions that I'm not gonna be able to get to here. And then hitting rock bottom, just in despair and isolation. They say here about rock bottom, though it may seem that all is lost when we find ourselves here, the truth is that we have to pass through this place before we can embark upon our journey of recovery. The main thing I want to get across tonight is recovery is not to stop using drugs or alcohol or whatever it is. Recovery is a better way to live.
Yes, it is.
And it is based on all the programs, NA, CA, AA, are all based on Bible spirituality principles. And don't get it twisted. There's a lot of people in churches that will tell you that you don't need those things, okay? But AA has been around since the 1930s, and they have saved a lot of people's lives.
And I like that they always talk about spirituality, because my first sponsor in '94 told me people go seek religion because they don't want to go to hell. But we find spirituality because we've already been through it.
Right. And all spirituality is, if you want to break it down into something simple that you can take away tonight, is trying to see things from God's eyes and do things how God will want you to do them. Very simple. Treating your neighbor as you would want to be treated.
That's right.
You know, taking care of somebody who's less fortunate, somebody who is poor, who needs some food. That's spirituality. You know, we make religion or Christianity very complicated, you know, but it's really not. It's just doing the right thing for the right reason. That's the bottom line to it. So we talked a little bit about powerlessness, unmanageability. There are two types. I'm not going to be able to get into this very deep. The first one is things that you can see. When we do stupid things that get us incarcerated, you've been there. Or we do things that could have gotten us incarcerated if we had been caught. I'm going to tell myself a little bit. When I was in the Navy, I decided that we're going to celebrate with some of my buddies on a Friday night in Hawaii. And knew that I probably shouldn't have been drinking as much as I did, and then realized that I've got about 20 miles to drive home. On my way home, there's a roadblock. And I'm thinking, I'm done. Somehow, they didn't stop my car. And that was the last time I did something stupid as that. Okay? But that could have ruined my whole career. You know, that decision to get behind the wheel That's unmanageability. I didn't realize I was unmanageable then, okay? But it's a progression. It continued in other things in my life. That was an outward sign. Inwardly is somebody who is emotionally volatile, just kind of blow up for apparently no reason. They say that is the most obvious sign of inward or personal unmanageability. Okay, not being able to manage our finances, spending more money than somebody said than we have, you know, sometimes spending money to impress people that we don't even care about or like, but we want to show them, we have certain things, buying cars or things that, status. Okay, that's a form of unmanageability. Insisting on having my own way. Okay. I got a crescendo on that. Do I insist on having my own way? You don't have to answer this. What effects has my insistence had on my relationships? Do I maintain a crisis mentality, responding to every situation with panic? How has that affected my life? If everything is an emergency, nothing is. That's how people are going to view you. If everything that you come up with is a crisis, people are going to get tired and they're going to say, I'm done. You're just going from one crisis to the other. There's some things to think about. I'm not asking you guys to respond to that. I'm going to get to, I talked a little bit about reservations. Reservations are places in our program that were reserved for relapse. They're built around the idea that we can retain a small measure of control. You said that, this sister right here. Something like, okay, I can accept that I can't control my using, but I can still sell drugs, can I? This is irrational nonsense that people have justified to continue their habits. We may think that certain parts of the program don't apply to us. For example, I thought the steps was a good idea for other people. Okay,
Thank you.
definitely no. I just needed to tell me what I need to do to stop watching what I was watching. Okay, well, that really didn't work. We may think that something, we may think there's something we just can't face clean, such as a serious illness, I talked about this, or death of a loved one, without using. And then I touched on this before, after accomplishing some goal, making a certain amount of money, or being clean for a certain number of years, that we're able to control our using. I have proven to myself time and time again, the slightest thing that I watch or let go into my mind first, because it goes into my mind first. Hey, that's, I might want to scroll over there and see what that's about. Okay? That's the beginning of the end right there. Okay? No matter how long I've been clean. And that's the main point I want to drive home tonight. Yes.
In scriptures, whatever, what I'm understanding is we're letting say that our feelings or if a loved one dies, then I don't think we're supposed to be touching. If Jesus, not that there. If Jesus says, leave your family, he says, sell all your belongings, leave your families behind. I'm thinking that we weren't supposed to be touchy. Like, I guess that's all I'm saying,
You're not supposed to be
touchy about,
like those type of things.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I hear what you're saying. Let me say it a different way. We have to have the burn the ships mentality when we come into recovery. You know, first of all, we have to admit to do this step, we have to be abstinent, no matter what it takes. Secondly, we have to say, I'm going for it. I'm going all out because I went all out for everything. There's scripture that says I believe it's in First Peter where it says that we have spent enough time doing 5 minutes over.
No, I wanted to say something.
Oh.
So you said abstinence, and now the new thing that they're teaching is harm reduction.
What?
Which is harm reduction is when you when what they're talking about is slowing down and helping you to get to the stopping point. But for so long, the only thing that we ever talked about was total abstinence. And now they've said, well, we need to try something new. But, for me, if I had not stopped, I would have died. One more was going to kill me. And that's what's in my head still today.
I hear you.
Yeah, one more will kill me.
I had to come to that same realization that, I can't function like other people function around certain things at certain places,
Right.
And so for me, I had to put a complete stop and say, this is a new way that I've got to look at life, and to be honest with you all and share what I've gone through, because what I found in sharing is I run into people who are afraid to admit that they need help, which is the last thing I was going to talk about, which is surrender. Surrender is not a bad word. Surrender versus resignation. Resignation is when we feel we finally realize we're addicts, but we haven't accepted recovery as the solution to that yet. Okay, that's resignation. But surrender is, I'm going to try something different, even though I don't understand everything about it, but I'm willing to give it a try and give it the best that I can. Somebody was shaking their head or saying something like that. Yes.
Well, saying it's so invalid. What are you saying? It's a such thing as slowing down?
That's what they're teaching now. Some treatment centers, recovery processes talk about harm reduction. They talk about slowing down, and to me, that's just like what they did back in the 80s was when they was taking heroin addicts and putting them on methadone to try and help them stop doing heroin. And all they was doing is going from one drug to another one more powerful.
Surrender is not to admit defeat, but to switch to the winning side, to deal with the same problem in a different way.
Yes, sir. That's it.
Yeah, because it ain't no such thing as all right. I know they go
So
Thank you for that.
what did you say? I didn't catch it. Was loud.
You talk about surrender.
I got loud at one point. Surrender is not necessarily to admit defeat, but to switch to another way, to deal with the same problem in a different direction.
That's good. I like that. Yeah. So, surrender is like Reginald was saying, we're not trying to come up with our own way of taking care of things. We're looking at God's way. We're not leading to our own understanding. And that's where, I don't know about y'all, but that's where I get in trouble. I'll hear something in these rooms and I'll say, well, that might work for other people, but I'm going to do it this way.
Yeah.
Because, I think I could tweak this. How many of you ever, last thing I'm going to ask, buy something from a IKEA and you try to put it together without reading the instructions? Okay. Then finally you surrender and read the instructions because you realize you could have saved about 2 or 3 hours of putting it together, right? That's all it is, you know. So if you got something on this, come back again.